Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be doing my 14.20 ADC tier list. So if you have content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. There were a couple of changes towards the ADC role this patch, mostly focused around buffing some of the outliers and then nerfing down some of the top. The main things here though are the fact that Collector got buffed, which was good for the item. It was in a pretty rough spot, very expensive last patch, and they took the price down but then took away some of the power. Overall, ended up being a net positive for the item. Utah Wild Arrows, on the other hand, not doing great. It's still a pretty bad item. Almost no champion is currently building it. It does probably need a bit more to really thrive within the game, but it's still, underperforms in its current state. Not something I'd really recommend building. But let's get into the tier list. So the D tier is going to have a new addition. In fact, Aphelios has gone from the D tier, and Zeri is moving down to the D tier. She is the worst performing ADC now. She's definitely not really recovered from the nerfs she received in 14.18, and then the item system just getting worse for her, so she does drop down all the way to the D tier. Just not something I'd really recommend picking at the moment unless you're very comfortable playing Zeri and you can still find those pop-off moments to really snowball and get advantages within the game. Overall, just not really going to recommend the champ in its current state. If you're wondering where Corki is with the buffs this patch, he's still just not very popular in the ADC role. In fact, he's like half as popular as Karthus, who is my least picked ADC at the moment. The champion, even with its buffs, just underperforms in its current state. It's getting buffed again in 14.21, so we'll have to see if it does really pick up any sort of traction here. I don't think it will. I think it will still probably be on the weak side. It's buffs towards W, and W tends to be mostly utilized as like an escape tool. Whether people have like the playstyle pattern change to really utilize the advantage of the buff, it'll be interesting to see, but overall I just don't think it's going to happen, so the champion would remain within my D tier. Moving on to the C tier events, so we have Xayah, who is probably the second worst performing ADC at the moment, alongside Smolder. Both these champions are not in a great spot in their current states. Xayah is being buffed in 14.21, but Smolder doesn't really get to be buffed because of obviously his dominance in both mid and top for competitive and elite for the most part. Within average, he's still pretty weak across both those two roles. Takes a bit too long to get online, and he does suffer from relatively similar issues within the bot lane as well at the moment. Xayah's case, she's being buffed by 5% damage on the W, which is nice. It does help her. Whether it'll be enough to really push her up the C tier, I think it might get her towards the higher end. I don't know if it'll push her into the B tier. I just don't think she will get enough power from it, realistically. The other champions here are Lucian, who is underperforming compared to the other marksmen. I don't think this champion's on quite the same tier as like your Xayahs and your Smolders, but definitely hasn't really found his footing compared to where he was for the most part last split. Definitely struggling a bit more at the moment. Sivir and Kalista are the other two champions remaining, coming from the last tier list into this one, remaining in the C tier. In Kalista's case, she's still very elite skewed. I think she's like better than she has been across most of last split and then some of the previous split. Bork is being nerfed on 14.21, so I do imagine that will just end up dropping back down. It's a pretty big nerf as well to the item, so she will remain within the C tier. Stays in the C tier this patch. If you're comfortable on her, she can still be very strong, very much utilizing good support synergies and good support pairings. And if you're duoed with someone, then this champion can definitely have more value than some of the other marksmen within the role. In Sivir's case, she's one of the easiest champions in the game, and she shouldn't really be this weak. She is in a pretty rough spot. She's being buffed in 14.21 though, and it's a pretty big buff. It's mostly focused around amping up her Q damage, which should definitely help her within the mid to early game, where it is mostly being focused towards. The other champion which is being added here is Aphelios. He does move up from the D tier to the C tier. Not only did Collector get buffed this patch, but he also got buffed, and he's in a pretty good spot. If you're comfortable playing with Aphelios, he's definitely probably in the best spot he's been in for like the entirety of last split and this split. So yeah, go ahead, play the champion if you're very comfortable on it. If you're not, you're probably not playing Aphelios. He's pretty OTP dependent. You're not going to see him outside of mains of the pick. Lots of champions moving up out of the C tier into the B tier. So we have Samira, who, well, I say loads. I actually have Samira as one of them, and then the other one actually jumps all the way up to the A tier. So in Samira's case, she got she got buffed through Collector this patch. That basically just pushed her up enough from the C tier to the B tier. She gets her spike item quicker. She really needs it to snowball, and that does just massively help her. So she does go up from the C tier to the B tier. The other champion, which I haven't actually moved up but did get buffed this patch, technically was Tristana. She had both the range on her Q and E, not Q and E, W and E, R and E. God, I got it wrong 3 times. I can't count today. Alright, anyway, Tristana got more range on two of her abilities, which is huge for her because she does want to obviously be able to tag those abilities from further away so she can utilize her range more effectively, and it's not as misleading, so it does line up with obviously her auto attack range. Overall, it was nice. It was a good quality of life change to her. She does move up from the bottom of the C tier towards the higher end of the C tier. Do I think she's quite powerful enough to move up from the C tier to the B tier? Probably not. I actually do think she probably sits like in between Lucian Sivir maybe, but yeah, at the moment, she's kind of gaining more mastery as more people put time into the readjusted Tristana. In the beta event, so we have Twitch, who is definitely struggling at the moment. This pick is obviously very solo queue bound and very snowball reliant. Once again, like Aphelios, mostly played by one tricks of the champion. Bork being nerfed next patch will probably drop him all the way down to the C tier, but for the moment he's just about hanging on in the B tier. If you're wanting to play Twitch, then you still can, but I'd recommend a lot of other champions over him in his current state. Ezreal is also within my B tier. Now, Ezreal is more promising than Twitch. Like, Twitch is definitely on the downwards. Ezreal can still have his really high highs when in the beta. In fact, we've seen people like, I want to say Pays, but it wasn't Pays. It was someone else who played him at Worlds and then popped off against G2. I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. But yeah, like that. You can still have his high highs and he can still definitely be very rewarding to play. Definitely if you're very comfortable on the champion, you're consistently landing and rotating the skill shots effectively, then he has more value. If you're not comfortable, then yeah, hop off the champion, play some other things. He's not a necessary pickup at the moment, but he can still definitely be rewarding and get you results if you are comfortable on him. Draven, also within my beta, probably a bit lower at the moment. He still is obviously very reliant on snowballing, kind of akin to Samira. I usually have both these champions paired next to each other. It's relatively similar on what kind of functionality they need, want within the game. Snowballing, advantage, and then utilize that into taking over the game, and then sieging and ending the game. If you can't do that, then these two champions lose a lot of their value, making it quite hard to really have value in the first place if you're just not getting the first part done, which is the requirement of snowballing, getting early lane kills with their high damage and high auto attack damage or combo damage in Samira's case. Overall, yeah, these two picks come next to each other as very solid snowball options. Draven is arguably a bit harder to play though, and can still have, I'd say, probably higher highs than Samira. Yeah, Varus is also within my B tier. The champion's fine. Obviously, lethality Varus has kind of died at this point. It got nerfed quite aggressively with the going into Worlds patch because they didn't want lethality Varus to take over the meta. So on hit is the way you do have to play him at the moment. Bork being nerfed next patch will probably drop it down to the C tier as well, but currently, still a solid B tier option. Moving down from the A tier to the B tier is Vayne. So Vayne doing a bit weaker this patch with a lot of the other marksmen being buffed. She's going to get double tagged, tagged again going into next patch with Bork being nerfed. Once again, another loser with the item being nerfed, kind of akin to obviously Twitch and Varus. The champion just going to be doing a bit worse. Drops from the A tier to the B tier at the moment, alongside Syndra, who does also drop from the A tier to the B tier. The champion lost a bit of power with Ludens and Storm Surge being nerfed, making it a bit weaker, thus dropping down to the B tier. Moving up all the way from the C tier to the A tier is Caitlyn. Caitlyn is doing really well again. She really benefited from Collector being buffed. She really benefited from her direct buffs. There's actually a lot of contested rune options on Caitlyn at the moment, whether it's PTA, Fleet, Lethal Tempo, and First Strike. You can really choose depending on what you need within the game, but First Strike does look to be the best option on her currently. Even though it's one of the lesser played options, you can farm it really easily with your 650 range and then additional range obviously from like your Q and your ultimate. Really enables you to farm it quite consistently. Overall, looks like a good option. Caitlyn doing really well at the moment. Definitely shoots up in priority this patch, especially if you're comfortable with her and some of her pairings, and then really see going around the map sieging where you can and utilizing her very, very long range. Other champions which are moving up from the lower tiers, we have both Jinx and Yasuo. Yasuo directly got buffed this patch, and he really benefited from that. He shoots all the way up to the higher end of the A tier. Obviously, Bork being nerfed next patch will lose some of that power, but with the Q crit damage buff and the armor pen buff on crit, both these changes really helped him. He does go up from the B tier to the A tier as a very solid melee anti-marksman pick. The other champion is Jinx, looking to go back towards the Collector build. She does jump up from the B tier to the A tier. Not quite on the same tier as like Caitlyn and Yasuo at the moment, but she does have more build variety, so she does definitely benefit from that. The Collector build, with it being buffed, does look to be more favourable again. Like Collector into I don't believe Opportunity looks to be too favourable on her in its current state, but you can still go things like Kraken and Static Shiv into like a PD, and yeah, these items still can function on her. Jumps up from the B tier to the A tier at the moment. MF remains in the A tier. She's still a very solid option, very easy to play, benefited from Collector being buffed, and yeah, solid A tier pick at the moment. Also benefits from Engage, obviously. Nyla is a pretty interesting pick at the moment. Obviously, she got buffed going into this patch, and then instantly hotfixed, nerfed in a micro patch. There were big nerfs as well. They weren't small by any means, and she definitely did lose a lot of power from that. But then she stayed fairly neutral, so she did gain a huge amount from the quality of life changes, and she is being QOL'd again going into 14.21, so we will have to see where that lands her. But for the moment, she's a solid A tier pick. She remains in a relatively similar spot after the micro patch to her. Before that, she was probably the best marksman in the game, and yeah, she did deservedly need the micro patch nerfs. What else we got? So we got Ziggs, who also remains in the A tier, still a great mage option. His siege potential is some of the best in the game, and that is really where he shines. That combined, obviously, with his range and consistent damage when you're able to land bombs on either slow or low mobility targets. Lux stays within the A tier as well. She lost some power of Ludens and Storm Surge being nerfed, but she's still a very good option here. By no means taken out as much as Syndra. Syndra was already kind of underperforming compared to the likes of Lux. But like mages generalistically doing a bit better in the bot lane at the moment. So Lux, yeah, stays within the A tier, just lower down compared to where she previously was. Ashe is still one of the go-to marksmen at the moment. She's honestly almost elite skewed in her current state. The strength of her early game, making her a very oppressive lane bully, and the amount of control she has over the map are all very elite skewed tied things. And that has definitely hurt her a bit because of, just not being as good for the general player base. This champion is should be one of the easiest. She's considered one of the introductory marksmen to the game. And yeah, she's definitely been over time pushed towards her early game, and that has made her viable and competitive. Obviously, she's a very strong competitive option. We've seen her both in support and in the ADC role. And overall, yeah, she does sit towards the middle of the A tier. Still a very good pick in her current state. But yeah, I mean, she's viable all the way up into the higher ranks at the moment. So if you're very comfortable on Ashe, then you can definitely have a lot of success on this pick. Other two champions here, we've got two more champions here and then one dropping down. So we've got Brand and Kaiser who remain, and we have Veigar who drops from the S tier to the A tier. In Veigar's case, it was just a small tap towards one of his AP ratios, but it no longer makes him like S tier in both mid lane and the bot lane. He now is just slightly weaker down here, but still a very strong option, especially if you're very comfortable on him. In Kaiser's case, she's still one of the premier elite skewed marksmen at the moment. She's being nerfed in 14.21. I've gone backwards somehow. But yeah, she definitely really benefits from engaged supports, utilizing full rotations of her passive, different build variations at the moment. Obviously, you're primarily playing like your static Ginsu with Nashor 2 variant, which is very popular in its current state. And overall, yeah, she's in a very good state at the moment, so very deserving of an A tier spot. Does tend to be a bit harder to pilot than some of the other options like your MFs and your Ashes. In Brand's case, he is being nerfed quite aggressively in 14.21 just because of how overperformant he is across 4 different roles at the moment. ADC, APC in his case, obviously, does tend to be one of the, still one of these strong options. Compared to jungle, which has been nerfed a bit, he's still very good there, and yeah, he's still very good here. So if you're comfortable on Brand, definitely worth picking up. At the moment, not going into the next patch, I believe he will probably drop down to the B tier, but still, yeah, solid at the moment if you are looking to play him. Moving on to the S tier then, so we have the same champions here. We have Jhin, who is nerfed this patch. He drops from the top of the S tier to the bottom of the S tier. He's hanging on at this point. I would like to move him down to the A tier. I think the champ has clear limitations, and obviously its DPS. It has very high damage, low DPS. That combined with the fact that it's very vulnerable to assassins who aren't being buffed this patch, but are being buffed along the line. I mean, I believe in 14 point, either 22 or 21. I think it's 22. They said they're going to buff, change mid lane to help assassins. So that will be negative towards Jhin. He is obviously very weak to assassins. No mobility, no dashes. Fast mobility. I mean, he's very fast, which does help him. Overall, anyway, I'm rambling. Jhin definitely weaker at the moment, so he does drop from the high end of the S tier to the lower end of the S tier, but still a solid option. Definitely one of the good go-tos in the bot lane. For 4 mages, your Seraphine, great enchanter, great CC, does have some different build variations we've seen knocking around, whether that's like your very heavy AP versions to do more damage and like have carry potential, or more of your enchanter like rower variations. There's just a lot of strength to this champion in its current state, and a very good S tier pick. Swain is being changed next patch, but he is one of the best champions in the game in his current state. I mean, his ability to fight at close range is just one of the best, and it makes him very oppressive. But he's very unpopular, which is why he's being changed, because of just how strong he is and how unpopular. So the two things just don't correlate, and that's a really unhealthy spot for a champion to be in. In Hui's case, this champion is being nerfed in 14.21, which is good because he is broken in the bot lane. I've said it for a while at this point, but I really do think Hui has been a very underrated and underappreciated pick here. Definitely something which I still think will be good in 14.21. Like, by no means do I think it's gone. I just don't think it will be quite S tier compared to where it is at the moment. Karthus is also being nerfed in 14.21, so 3 of the 4 AP options here are being nerfed, and Brand as well. So going to be a really big shift in the bot lane next patch. He's going to be losing 5% on the R AP ratio, which should tag him down to the A tier, but for the moment he remains in the S tier. Still a great bot lane option. And then Kog'Maw is probably my premier marksman of the patch. He's simple to play, has a good early game, has a good mid game, has a good late game. He's generalistically pretty strong. He has loads of different build variations. We've seen AP Kog'Maw, we've seen like tank hybrids of Kog'Maw, not like full tank, obviously that doesn't exist, but like the kind of like Ginsu Bork Ginsu or Ginsu Bork into like Runans, and then things like Jack Show. We used to see Titanic Hydrats. I don't believe we see that at the moment, but yeah, there's just lots of things you can really do with this champion, and it makes him a very powerful bot lane pick in his current state. If you're just looking for a default build, then obviously the standard of like your Ginsu Bork is still very good, and it can still work in most games. And then AP is like your Blackfires, your Seraphs. I've seen like loads of different variations of this, so it's worth like doing some research depending on what kind of AP variation you want within the game. But overall, he's in a great spot at the moment, a very good S tier pick, and probably my premier pick of the bot lane for this patch. So those are my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.